Welcome to the Observation Room. I am your host, Michelle Vaughn, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, health and wellness. Now, my belief is that health is the greatest asset one can have. And if you're lucky to be blessed with good health, then you should be grateful. Now, I don't talk in absolutes, but I'll tell you for myself, anytime I was performing at my best, I made the most stable and increased money and overall general happiness was when I put my health and wellness before everything else. Now, I believe it increases our chances for a successful life and for our successful businesses. Now, if you wrote down everything I do for my health, a lot of people would say it's really ridiculous. It to me is something that I've worked on for decades that has developed patterns and habits over years. But this is kind of what my normal day looks like. So I walk in the mornings. I walk after meals. I lift weights 4 days a week at minimum. I pay attention to my sleep. I take magnesium and creatine. I use red light therapy, a vibration plate. I do Pressotherapy every day. I have Epsom salt baths, and there are peptides somewhere in that conversation. I think about food, protein intake, my recovery, my stress. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I listen to what my body's telling me. And on paper, this maybe looks like I'm doing a very small wellness resort out of my house, but it's not. I've developed these habits over time. Now I understand the practical question that list creates. Does all of that actually make a difference? Which parts are worth doing, and where would a normal person even start? Because health has become very commercial. You can begin by wanting to feel a little better, and then with 20 minutes online, you become convinced that you need a laboratory 12 powders, a refrigerated injection, machine that glows, another machine that shakes, a ring that grades your sleep, and a morning routine that requires you to wake up yesterday. I get it. Now, that is especially when you're not already tired, right? Because that's the most important thing. I think sleep is the most important. Now, the honest answer is that I didn't wake up one morning and do all these things. And I didn't complete a health system overnight. I built it by paying attention, right? Now, a lot of what I do is foundational. And some of it supports that foundation. Some of it's experimental. And I continue because I think it's useful, or I'm actually interested enough to keep observing. I don't give every practice equal weight, and I don't think that owning more equipment means you understand your body better. A red light panel cannot outvote 3 hours of sleep, and a supplement doesn't negotiate on your behalf of a life that is wearing you out. So if you're wondering where to begin, I would begin with the practices that let you gather the most honest information for yourself. Now, taking a walk after you eat is so good for your digestion. Building your strength, especially in my age, I'm past menopause now. How you sleep, noticing how you eat, and after you eat, how do you feel? Do you give your body to recover? Then you can decide whether there's additional tools and support or something you really need, or they just something make you feel productive. Now, I have nothing against tools. I own a lot of them, but I want each one to have a job. There's no value in letting them sit in the corner and look expensive and mysterious when you're continuing to ignore the obvious signals. Now, walking is probably my simplest example. I walk in the morning because it gets my body moving before the day makes. If I'm outside, I get air and a change in perspective. This is where I think the most, and a little distance from the screen that would otherwise be happy to greet me before I fully greeted myself for the day. Now, walking is ordinary that most people underestimate it, which may be part of its charm. It supports cardiovascular health, circulation, mood, sleep, and general physical function. The CDC actually describes benefit from physical activity that begin with a single session and accumulate over time. Now, I also value that walking doesn't ask me to become a different person. I can do it. I can think, I can listen, I can pray, I can plan, I can be quiet, or I can just notice the neighborhood and the animals and the birds. Now, there's room for me inside that practice. Now, walking after a meal has a more specific purpose. When muscles contract, they use energy, and the movement after eating can help the body handle the rise in your blood glucose that follows a meal. A systematic review of small randomized trials also found that post-meal activity, often when walking, reduced immediate glucose rise compared with being inactive or exercising before the meal itself. Now, that does not mean that dinner requires a forced march through the subdivision. It means that 10 or 15 minutes of movement may be doing more than helping me clear my head. Now, with my history of gestational diabetes and insulin resistance, which I had starting at 18 years old, it matters so much to me. It's one of those practices that connects a biological reason with a life that I can actually live. I can have dinner and then move. I don't have to make it a big theatrical. It's just become a part of my daily life. Now, weight training is different because I'm asking my body to meet resistance. And I like that. I've always enjoyed challenging my body. Basketball, tennis, dance, yoga, exercise, and strength training gives that instinct of practical direction. Building muscle is not only an appearance project for me. Muscle helps lift us and carry us and climb stairs and protect us and maintain balance and use our glucose and stay capable. I want to stay capable. The National Institute on Aging emphasizes maintaining muscle, mobility, and independence as we get older. I am far more interested in being able to move through my own life than winning an argument with the scale. Now that has taken time for me to understand because my weight has changed so much throughout my life. I've been very thin. I have been very overweight. I have felt very inflamed. I've eaten whole foods and I've loved vegetables since I was a child. And I've also learned that eat better and exercise is an incomplete sentence for some people. It may be useful advice at the broadest level, but it doesn't explain hormones and insulin resistance and sleep and grief and stress, medication, genetics, recovery, or the way a body changes with age. Two people can perform the same behavior and have very different bodies, different histories, different results. Even the same person can perform the same behavior at two different stages of life and receive a different response. That is the one reason I think aging can be such a gift. Even when parts of it are so inconvenient and nobody asked our permission. Aging gives us enough history to compare ourselves with ourselves. We begin to notice what used to work, what no longer works, what can we tolerate, what costs too much afterward, and what helps us feel steady. If we're willing to learn the body becomes less like an object we're grading, A through F, and more like a source of information. That doesn't mean that every sensation creates a secret message. I went through that and had to learn that the hard way, but it means we stop assuming the body is being difficult whenever it refuses to behave according to our plan. Now, sleep is probably the clearest place where the body refuses to negotiate. I can organize a beautiful schedule that treats sleep as leftover time, right? But the body still keeps the books. Sleep supports your memory and your attention and your emotional control, your immune function and metabolic health. The National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute notes that sleep deficiency can affect decision-making, problem-solving, reaction time, emotional regulation, and by the way the body responds to insulin. I care about that because I make decisions for a living. I'm responsible for businesses, clients, a household, relationships, and work that requires me to interpret complicated things. Sleep is not an empty space between the productive days. It is a part of the equipment I use to think. Now, recovery is a large category around sleep. It includes the pause after training, when the body adapts. In the evening, when I stop adding stimulation, the decision to not punish myself for needing a slower day, or the willingness to notice that a practice which felt good last month might feel different this week. My definition of discipline has had to grow beyond making the body obey at all costs. Effort matters, and so does having enough attention to recognize the response. Now, if I keep increasing the demand while ignoring what comes back, I'm managing myself poorly. And I would recognize that immediately if I saw it happening inside of a company, right? And that comparison is useful because people who run businesses or households understand that maintenance, when it applies to everything except themselves. We service the car before the engine sees. We update the software on your computer. We reconcile our accounts before we go negative. Then we expect the person responsible for remembering all of that to run indefinitely on caffeine, pressure, and a good intention. It's strange when you put it so plainly, right? The most complicated system in the household is the one we keep telling to stop being dramatic. Now, magnesium is one of the biggest support systems I use. It is a mineral in the body that our body needs it to function for muscles function, for nerve function, for blood glucose regulation, for blood pressure, for protein production, our bones, and many other processes. The NIH Office of Dietary Supplements also makes an important distinction between magnesium in food and magnesium taken in supplements. Forms vary. supplements can interact with some medications, and more is not automatically better. So what I value about magnesium is not the fantasy that one capsule repairs an entire life. I value it as one part of a supporting system that are already doing a tremendous amount of work for me. It belongs in the context of food, sleep, movement, medical history, and how I actually respond, not in a little kingdom of its own. Now, creatine is another support system that I've been doing quite a few years now. It's one of those things that spent years being treated as if it belonged to only a 22-year-old man carrying a gallon of water through the gym. Creatine helps the body rapidly replenish energy used during muscular effort, and it's been studied extensively for repeated high-intensity work, strength training, and performance. Now, the NIH Summary of Exercise Supplements reflects that evidence without pretending every product or every person is identical. I use it because muscle and strength matter to me, especially as I age. And because I'm interested in practices that support function, I'm not trying to become a competitive bodybuilder. I'm a 44-year-old woman who has been post-menopause for 3 years now. And I'm not even trying to look younger. I just want to be in my best health. I would like to remain an active participant in my plans. I want to feel good in my body. Now, we get into the category that consider tools and experiments rather than the floor holding up the house. Now, red light therapy uses specific wavelengths of red or near infrared light in an attempt to influence cellular processes. You'll hear very broad claims about it, while the actual evidence depends on the wavelength, the dose, the device tissue, and the outcome being studied by the FDA. The FDA's guidance for photobiomodulation devices is a useful reminder that these are specific devices with specific intended uses, not one that it covers everything. I use red light as a recovery and a wellness tool because I'm interested in how it supports my body. And I can observe whether it earns a place in my routine or not. I don't ask it to compensate for the foundation things that I've already set. Now, the vibration is similar. I've been doing this for about 8 years now, every single day. The vibration plate is, it's a platform that moves rapidly, and the body responds with repeated muscle activity to stabilize itself. So research on whole body vibration suggests it might help certain measures of lower body strength, balance, and function, or particularly in some older, less mobile populations, but the result and protocols vary. A recent systematic review found encouraging results that in some areas and inconsistent results in others. I value the vibration plate as an accessory, as how I add movement, especially throughout the day at my computer. It sits under my desk. And I hop on it a few times a day. I don't treat it as a replacement for walking, lifting weights, balancing, stretching, or all the ordinary use of my legs. Now, Pressotherapy is different for me because this is something I pull out every single day. I use it every morning. Usually when I'm meditating, I spend an hour doing my arms and legs at the same time. It's been a part of my overall health and recovery routine for about at least 6 or 7 years now. I associate it with managing inflammation and feeling better, and that's the honest reason I do it. It's usually at 6 a.m. Now, the equipment uses sleeves that inflate and release in sections and create an intermittent compression around the limbs. And research on athletic recovery has found that mostly small benefits, but some possible reduction in perceived soreness and mixed results on other recovery measures. But that evidence doesn't prove every single claim people make about Pressotherapy, but my universal recommendation is that I use it. I can tell you how long I use it. I use it an hour every day, arms and legs at 6 a.m. Now, of course, none of this is medical guidance. This is just me explaining to you what I do every day and the routine that I've cultivated, especially over the last decade. Now, Epsom salt baths belong in that same category. A warm bath I have every single night. It creates a transition for me. It changes the temperature of my body. It relaxes my muscles. It removes me from the endless opportunity of me go all day to, it tells my day that the day is about to end. And there is evidence that warm bathing before bed can improve perceived sleep quality and help people fall asleep sooner. Now, although the research is probably limited, I'm not going to tell you that, but I will tell you the Epsom salt is moving through the skin and it's solving something because that's how it works for me. The bath itself is so valuable though, even if you don't have Epsom salt. Warm water, quiet, being unavailable for 20, 30 minutes. will accomplish a lot for you, for your nervous system, and for your sleep ahead. Now, peptides are something that I've been looking at over the last couple years, been working with. Peptides are short chains of amino acids. And different peptides, medicines, or compounded products are intended to influence entirely different processes. Their evidence, their regulatory status, sourcing, and risk are not interchangeable for me. The FDA has identified significant evidence and quality concerns with several compounded peptides that are heavily discussed in the wellness spaces. So this is an area where I don't take a category name as I know all the answers, because I don't. I want to know which substance for what purpose, based on what evidence, from what source, and from who has the oversight. So what I value here is not just the novelty, it's an opportunity to make a specific decision about my health and wellness without surrendering my judgment to just excitement. Now, that may sound like a lot of qualifications, but it reflects the larger way I think about health. I can be open without being gullible. I can work with doctors and learn from experts. I can read the research and use the technology available. And still, I remain responsible for understanding the decisions that I'm making for myself. Expertise is so valuable, and medical care is so valuable. I know enough about my family history to know that I have no interest in pretending otherwise. And what I resist is the idea that participation either means complete obedience or complete rejection. There is a wide, intelligent space between those two positions where a person can ask really good questions and bring useful observations, understand the trade-offs, and work with qualified people. My family history had made that space really important to me early on. Most of my relatives I lost died from a heart disease. My father had a stroke and a heart attack and died at 57. He had open double bypass surgery at 40. Two of my uncles died at 38 and 39, and my paternal grandmother died at 46 years old, before I was born. My aunt on my mother's side died of a heart attack at 44, and she was an ER doctor. She was thin and active. She climbed mountains and gardened and looked like, to the person, many of us, that would live forever, right? The history taught me not to confuse appearance with information. A body can be thin and still carry the risk. A body can be larger and contain strength, endurance, and improving health. A person can eat vegetables and exercise and still need a deeper medical understanding of how their bodies work. Now, my maternal grandparents experienced dementia and Alzheimer's, and, mental illness has also taken a huge toll on my family. So when I look at health, I cannot just reduce it to weight or whether someone appears to be disciplined from across the room. The body is carrying so many genes and history and environment and stress and access and behavior and age and things medicine is still teaching us and we're still learning about. I think we should be humble enough to admit that the picture is so complicated and responsible enough not to use complexity as an excuse to disappear from our own care. Now, I became pregnant and a mother at the age of 18. I had gestational diabetes then and dealt with insulin resistance since that time in my life. That experience gave me information that generic advice couldn't fully interpret for me. I already liked whole foods as a child. I ate mostly vegetables. I enjoyed exercise, yet my body moved through periods of being very thin, very overweight, inflamed, strong, tired, and everything in between. I became more curious about how I felt rather than how I looked to convince myself of the health story. Whole foods remain a large part of how I eat because they give me practical base, vegetables and protein sources, foods I recognize, foods that bring nutrients and satisfaction rather than asking a label to perform a magic trick. Macro awareness helps me understand the rough composition of what I'm eating, protein, carbohydrates, and fat, and whether it supports what I'm asking my body to do. Now, if I want to build muscle and recover from training and keep energy steadier, I manage my glucose thoughtfully. The protein and the overall structure of a meal matter. This doesn't require me to turn lunch into an accounting emergency. Awareness is useful. Obsession is not the goal. I pay attention to the response. How is my energy? How am I hungry again? Do I feel satisfied? Am I satiated? Is my training improving? Am I able to lift more? Am I recovering? Am I sleeping at night? What happens in my sleep? What patterns show up over several weeks rather than at one dramatic Tuesday? Now that's the kind of information that I bring into the medical appointments, a nutrition conversation or my own planning. Now I feel bad is a real is a real thing, but a pattern would give you more to work with, right? So paying attention turns a vague compliment into something that it can be investigated. Alcohol became one of my clearest decisions in my own investigation. I used to drink way too much. I no longer drink. It's been a long time, and I didn't like who I was when I drank. It's complete enough reason for me, but also alcohol affects your sleep and your recovery and your judgment and your long-term health risk. The CDC's current guidance is very plain that drinking is less better for health than drinking more. So, but the decision became durable when it connected to identity. I could stop negotiating with myself about whether a particular amount was technically acceptable and ask a more useful question. Does this move me towards the woman that I'm trying to become? I had pictured her very clearly. She was living the life that I said I wanted. She was calm, relaxed, wise, friendly, healthy, and grounded. In that picture, ambition did not require constant frantic energy, and the future was not being built through choices that made her dislike the person arriving there. Now, once I could see her, I began making decisions as her. And that practice still affects my health today. My parenting, the way I build businesses, the way I speak, my relationships, and major decisions that I make. I will never perform a perfect version of her every day, but she gives me a direction when convenience and identity are arguing with each other. Now, this is where the mental and emotional regulation belong in the health conversation. The mind is not floating above the body, issuing sophisticated instructions. Stress can show up as tension or pain or poor sleep or appetite changes, exhaustion, irritability, or feeling that the whole world has become louder. Relationships and environments can coincide with changes in how that body feels. That observation doesn't not prove that every symptom was caused by stress or that a serious condition can be thought away. It gives me another category of information. I can ask, what has changed? What keeps repeating? What does it do around certain people or certain demands? Or whether I have built any space for that to settle. Regulation, as I understand it, is not becoming serene enough that life stops happening. It's increasing my ability to remain present while life happens. That can include walking and sleep and food and movement and breathing and quiet and boundaries and conversations and professional care, or simply recognizing that I have been living as if every request were an emergency. Now, I created 75 Regulate and shared resources publicly because people need practical ways to practice this. It's a free group on Facebook if you'd like to join. But the point is not to win a calmness contest. It's to become better equipped to live the life that you actually want in front of you. And that brings us back to why these practices matter so much beyond health. If I am depleted or inflamed or under-recovered or constantly dysregulated, I do not leave that person at the door when I enter a meeting. She comes with me. She interprets the email that I get. She decides whether a problem is urgent. She listens to the client. She responds to a child. She prices her work or reviews numbers and decides what the future means. Taking care of my body does not guarantee wise decisions, but ignoring it removes useful support from the person being asked to make them. Inside Michelle Vaughn Co., the household, the advisory, I keep returning to the same idea from different directions. A decision has to live beside the rest of a life. A mortgage payment does. A business decision does. A health practice does. If a routine requires so much time, money, and energy or anxiety that it destabilizes the household it was supposed to support, we should notice that. If a wellness plan only works when nothing goes wrong, then it doesn't understand your life yet. Health belongs inside stewardship. The practical care of resources and responsibilities and relationships and the person carrying all of them. That's also what we model in a household. My son works out consistently. He avoids drinking or smoking. He eats intentionally. I didn't create that by suffocating him with rules or delivering a lecture every time he entered the kitchen. He watched an environment. Children notice what a household repeats, what it normalizes, what it celebrates, and what adults do when nobody's being graded. They learn whether care is punishment for appearance, fear, or an ordinary expression of responsibility. I think about that a lot when I consider what success means to me. We often place health at the very end of that plan. First, we build the business, we raise the children, we solve the money problem, we finish the project, survive the busy season, care for everyone else, and then prove we are dependable. But then when the calendar opens into a meadow and nobody needs anything, we will then take care of ourselves. I have never seen that meadow. There's usually another Tuesday waiting. Health belongs closer to that beginning because the body is not the reward we receive after building a life. It's a part of the person doing the building. The goal is not to protect ourselves so thoroughly that life becomes small or controlled and risk-free. Life will remain difficult, surprising, beautiful, and occasionally unreasonable. Caring for physical and mental and emotional well-being helps us meet it with more strength and more information and a greater capacity to participate. If you're trying to decide where to start, you do not need to copy my entire routine. This was built over decades. But begin with one practice that gives you better information or better support. Take a walk, hydrate, drink your water, and notice what changes. Add strength work that fits your current ability and pay attention to how you function. Protect enough time for sleep to learn what rested actually feels like. Look at a meal as support rather than a moral score of your day. Consider what alcohol actually costs you beyond the evening. If you're curious about a supplement or a device or a peptide, or ask what precise job you expect it to do and what evidence you would tell on whether you're doing it, bring your observations to the qualified people. Let your expertise add to your understanding rather than replace your participation. And stay curious enough to see a pattern, because one unusually good day or one terrible Tuesday may not tell you very much. But over time, you may notice that your energy changes after a certain meal or certain work, or that your patience is different after sleep, or your hydrated skin after sleep. Your body trains better doing one way or another, that your recovery changed with your age, or that your environment may have normalized leaves utensils every time. You may have also discovered that a symptom has nothing to do with your theory and that requires a different kind of care. Paying attention doesn't require you to arrive with an answer. It helps you become a useful participant in finding the answer to your health. The body will not always give us the outcome we want. People can do many things well and still become ill. My family history will never let me make health into a mortality play where disciplined people are safe and everyone else simply failed. What I can do is learn the person I'm responsible for carrying and understanding more of my choices. I can ask better questions and respond before every signal becomes a crisis. To me, that's a loving way to prepare our body for the work, the relationships, our pleasure, our movement, and ordinary mornings I hope it will continue to experience. Now, all the walking and the lifting and the sleeping and the eating and the supplements and light machines and baths and experiments only make sense to me when they serve the person living the life. The successful life I built has to be inhabited by someone, and I want to know her well enough to care for her while she's still on the way. Now, instead of treating care as something earned only after a beautiful person arrives. Now, this is not medical advice. It's just what I do in my daily practice, why I do it, and what I've learned by paying attention to my own. Now, if you know someone who has a drawer full of supplements and still does not know where to start, send them this episode. And if you want the next conversation, subscribe to the Observation Room. I am your host, Michelle Vaughn, and I will see you next week.